Hello everyone. So in the last video we created some functions here that will help us to save and to load data. Now we're going to want to try to do something with that. So the first thing is, let's go ahead and remove this part that we put in here because I don't want to create the new users here yet. But I actually am thinking that this is a good file to actually keep. So I'll cut that out there, and let's go ahead, create an actual file name that we will use for the user itself. So again, we'll have the string, and we're going to have the user file. And I'm capitalizing in this way just to help keep track of the differences between the stuff that I'm making as a constant and things like that. So in case you're wondering why I'm capitalizing differently for different variables, that's part of the reason. I'm not 100% consistent on it. I really should be, but I'm trying my best. You'll probably find many mistakes. But in any case, what we want to do is we're going to call the user file user.dat. So we will be keeping that. Later on, we will combine these two when we're actually checking, but we're going to need the base path separate because there may be other times where we still need that base path while we're doing different things. But the first thing that we want to do when we come into this main function, we always do this initialize component first. We'll just leave that intact. But the first time through, what we're going to do is we need to check if the user.dat file exists at all. Because the very first time that you run this program, it won't exist. So let me save this here. Now, obviously, the last time that I ran this, we went in and we saw that going into the bin, debug, all this stuff here, users.dat does exist. I am going to go ahead and delete that right now and then close here. So what we want to do is do a quick check. And if that file doesn't exist, we want to create the user to begin with. And then we're going to save that data. So how do we check if this file exists? It's actually extremely easy to do this. So all we have to do is come up with a, we'll do a string. We can do like a check file. That's going to equal the base path plus the user file name. Now we just need to see if that file exists. So what we can do is we just put in the check if file.exists parentheses check file. This will actually return true if the file exists and false if it doesn't. All it does is it checks. It doesn't tell you if the directory structure is sound or not. So just bear that in mind. What we will do is we will need to load the contents of file. Okay, but we know it's not going to exist yet because I just deleted it. So in this case, what we're going to do is prompt the user to fill out the data. So this is going to be the next thing that we check. Now, just to show that it went through the correct way, we'll just do a message box show, and we'll just put file not found, and let's put results. And then if it is there, we'll put it this way and say file was found with results. So we just run this right now and see what comes up. I save it, it's compiling first time through, and we got file not found. So this is exactly what we expected it to do because that file is deleted. So we close out of this. So the file was not found. That means that it does come to this section, and we need to prompt the user to fill out the data. Now, how are we going to do that? For that, what we want to do is actually create another window, another form, and the form will be the user data that they will fill out. So let me save this. We'll come up to the project, and just as we can add a class here, we can actually add a Windows form. So I'm going to click add Windows form. This will come up. We can leave the defaults exactly as it is, and let's call this add user, and I'll leave the .cs there. This will now load, and it will look exactly like it looked when we first went into the form 1. So we just have this new add user, and this is kind of in its own separate universe. So let me get this and pull this out a bit. And I'm not going to put a file menu on here because I'm going to use buttons to do everything. Let's just prove that this works though. So we'll put this with a label right here. We'll come up here and say label add new user. And we'll come down here and we'll just say add new user. And we'll have this showing up on this screen here. We'll worry about other details in a second, but we'll save this. Now, at this point, nothing will happen if I run because this doesn't say anything about that new window. So what we want to do is we now call this window. So the window is called add user. So we do add user and we'll just say a new form equals new add user. And actually, because we might have more, let's say new user creation form, just in case we have to use new forms later on, which we probably will because of the way that I'm going to be programming this. Now, when this is at this point, we need to actually have it pop up. So how do we make it pop up? New user creation form dot show, just like that. That will open it as a new window. So when we refresh now, it pops up and it's hidden behind, so it's two separate windows. So the next question is, how do we get it where this doesn't pop up behind? Because if you notice that as soon as this is done, it just continues down after it. So there's no pause, there's nothing waiting for this to show up. Well, instead of doing show, we can actually do a different version here, which is show dialog. Now this will actually create it just as if it was a message box, but here's the difference. We run this one. Now you can see we've got this and it's the only option, and only when we close it do we get the next program. So to get this to show up and have the user finish what we want them to do, we have to have the show dialog to appear first. So now the question is, now that we've got this where it will pop up, I'll save that, come back to here. What information do we need to have from the user? So once we get in here, then we're going to need to, at minimum, come up with a username. So to get input from a user, we just need to grab a text box here, throw this on here. We can call the text box up here. I always abbreviate text boxes as just TXT because I know it's going to be a text box. And this is going to be username. So this is here. Now, of course, we need to inform them that this is what we're asking for is a username. So we'll put this label up here. This is going to be label username. I spelled that correctly, good. And this is going to be enter username. We'll go like this. And you can have this either above or to the left side, however you want it. I'm going to put it this way, actually. Although it will depend on different things. So after we've got this, we also need a button that is going to be a submit button. And so button, again, I abbreviate BTN, and then let's just call it submit. And just like with the menus, what you can do on here is do the and sign, and then when it's like this, somebody can actually hit Alt-S to submit it. They don't have to click on it. So now it's a keyboard shortcut. So this is the bare minimum of what we would need to have. But if somebody tried to enter in text now, what ends up happening? So first of all, let's resize this for a minute because we don't need a giant window. So we'll save this. Submit will not do anything at all right now. It doesn't have anything connected to it. So for example, if we double click on this, it loads this code. There is nothing here. So clicking submit will do literally nothing. Now what we would need to do, bare minimum, is just like the other window, we just do this dot close. But we're not doing anything with the data if we do this. So when we run this, I can put in meter, I hit submit, all it does is close it, nothing has changed. So before we close this modal window, we want to do something with it. What is a good thing to check for? First of all, well, a good first step to check for is to make sure that the data isn't blank. So we'll take the text for user like this. We need to check it. So if we say if text the username like that is nothing, then ignore the click. Otherwise, what we need to do is come down here and close this. And let me get the white space, right? So for now, it'll do nothing if it's blank. We can put in an error message that will pop up, whatever we want to do at that point. So this is the text itself from the text box. If the text username dot text is null, then it does nothing. So we save this, we come by. This pops up the first dialog saying add new user, enter a new username. If we hit submit, nothing happens. But as soon as we type in anything, doesn't really matter what it is, now we can continue. So this is just a quick check to make sure that our data is put in place. And like I said, it would be nice to actually warn somebody that they need to do something. So we can just throw in a message box here to show, and we say username cannot be blank. And we'll do an error. Save like this. We run. This is just a user courtesy. So now when we do this, username can't be blank. So now they know, oh, I need to actually fill this out. So we can put in Peter, hit submit, and we're good to go. So now you might be thinking, well, that's it then, right? So all we have to do is we close this window and we come back to our form 1 over here. Actually go to the design. So we'll come here, we'll grab the label, we'll drop in another label, and let's just say label welcome. Call it welcome. And details here. You know what this is? Okay, I know. I realize now exactly what happened. So when we had this earlier, cancel that. We'll leave that as label 1. When we had it earlier, I had removed all the text from it and thought it was deleted, but it's actually still there. So label welcome still exists. So what we can do here is come back to this. So once we prompt for the new creation here, we can come down here. We'll just do label welcome.text equals, and now we need to get that username that the person just filled out from up above here. So how do we get that? So we know it's going to be the, I'm just going to put in this into a comment for the moment because we don't want to have errors here, but we know this is going to need to be the data that was filled out in the other form, or conversely, if the file already existed, it would be the data that was loaded from the file, but we'll deal with that part later. The question is, how do we get what comes through this here when we create the username on the add user? How do we get that back to here? Well, here you might be thinking, we just need to have the create user, and it looks like I've deleted the current user object before, but we can just create a new current user, right? So we can come up here actually and just say user current user is a new user, right? Now we have current user. So we could use current user over here, correct? And say current user dot username equals, wait, why is this underlined? You hold over it says current user does not exist in the current context. Now remember what I said when we were creating this form in the first place. This exists in its own universe. It is completely separate from what we've designed over here. So the data that we have here, the variables, things like that we're using here, might as well be a completely different program than what we're using in this add user portion. So anything in here, they're basically completely segregated from each other. Now, the question would be, how do we get it to communicate one to the other? So the good news, it's relatively straightforward. So first, let's just remove this because we're not going to need this at all. So now all we have to do is come up to the top here, click that. Let's put a space in here. We're going to make a public variable, and we're going to use the constructor method in order to pass data back. So we just do a public, it's going to be a string, and actually I kind of like what it's already put there. One thing I will change here is I like that as lowercase, and to avoid confusion, I'm going to call this the returned username. So we've created this variable. This is all we need to do with it. We can save that. Then we can come back to form 1. Now here, after we're done with everything, and we got the dialog closed, then all we need to do is set our current user and the username from that to be set to the new user creation form dot, and now we've got that returned username that we just created here. So we've set it as a property of that other class, the new user creation form, and now it comes in here. We can come down to the welcome text, and we want this to be a label, welcome text, and that's going to be set to the current user dot username. There we go. Sometimes IntelliSense really doesn't help at all. So now we save this, and oh, I forgot one. I almost hit run on this. It's not going to work because I forgot one small thing, which is only the most important thing. So we have to actually assign this variable to that text box. So now that we've got it, we're going to say the returned username is set to text username.text. Now with these changes in place, we run. This pops up. I'm going to move this towards the center of the screen. And if I put my name in, do Alt-S, you can now see my name appears up here on the label. So this works. And with that, I'm going to end this video for today. I hope you all do have a wonderful day.